Thank you very much. I'm going to start today because right now I'm told that Mr. Norton is in Georgetown sharing out this document. And we have come to understand that the PNC does this often, particularly in places like South Georgetown and Linden. That is, share documents there to mislead people. Now, I'm not going to go through all the details of their flyer because much of it is useless and people are going to see through them. But there are some real outrageous claims made, and as a political party and as General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party, I have to, although sometimes it's a repetitive task, I have to keep attention on these matters just so that people don't start believing the garbage that they are told. So the first element of this flyer is that the PPP has no development plan for the country. Now this is coming from APNU that meandered its way through 5 years, not focused on anything that mattered to people, from a welfare perspective, as well as from economic growth, job creation, revenue creation. Largely because of the lofty plans in their manifesto that they had. None of these materialized because they were unrealistic. So that's the first issue. I made it clear last week and several times at this forum that the People's Progressive Party has a development plan for the country. We have sectoral development plans. If you ask me, I can speak of every single one of them, what our goals are, and how we are translating those goals into policies and projects to achieve those goals. The health sector, we have redefined what the minimum care we want to give to people across the country. And we're working on several components to deliver a better quality care, namely the building of 12 new hospitals, plans for which were not there. I'd give the reporters a chance to settle. I need my coffee too. So 12 new hospitals. None were even conceptualized on the 2nd of December, August, the 2nd of August 2020, when President Ali became the president of this country, when Irfan Ali became the president of this country. So not just outlining a goal of what we want done, but putting in place 12 new hospitals that are either design stage or construction stage to achieve that goal. We then have a plan for rehabilitation of another 6 hospitals that's starting immediately, including big ones like in Bartica, West Demerara, Linden. And when I say rehabilitation, I mean major rehabilitation. Like in Linden, it's over $30 million of rehabilitation. We have, in that same sector, we have reformed their procurement policy. Now it's competitive. It's not like what used to happen on the Volder Lawrence. It's a competitive system. We had to destroy $10 billion of expired medical supplies. We have now replenished all of those to the extent that most areas now have adequate supplies. That was a major problem on the APNU. We exited that drug bond kind of arrangement, the corrupt one that was on the APNU. Thirdly, we brought in an international company working with support from HES to look at the management of the hospitals throughout the country. We have now passed privacy laws, so those would allow us to, and that was recently done, that would allow us now to move to an electronic patient management system for the entire country, where people can straddle both private and public care, but have their records follow them wherever they go. We have removed the corporate tax on private health care, and we have now more a liberal policy towards duty-free concessions for construction, and also the purchase of equipment for hospitals. So because of that, we've seen an explosion in private sector investment in the sector. And all of this, I can go on about our plans for lifestyle diseases, what we're doing there, how we're going to use telemedicine, etc., but it's a lot. Just to give you an idea, nothing was there in 2020. We have now not just conceptualized this, but it's all under implementation. And then APNU has the audacity to talk about no plans, that the government has no plans. That's in one sector. I saw they complain about water. Now, we have some water woes for two reasons: because of the electricity problem, and secondly, because of the drought. But clearly, if APNU were to just look at the documents and that went to the Parliament for funding, the new strategy is about 13 water treatment plants and also plans to remove more iron from the water, to clean the water, so inline treatment of water. That would impact on the lives of hundreds of thousands of Guyanese on the coast by giving them treated water, higher quality water. We also have an aggressive hinterland water program, and if you talk to GWI, you would see how successful it has been so far since we got back into office. So a massive program there that has been fully funded and now on the implementation now at this time. You recall, they themselves would recall, this was about Nigel Hughes putting out a document that Afro-Guyanese were not getting these water treatment plants. And I had to respond here to show that all the new ones that were given to foreign companies that had to bid, no local qualified for those, and that the plants that are being rehabilitated were given to Guyanese, and only 2 Afro-Guyanese had bid. So they should know by now that there is a plan for the sector, yet they keep repeating this. On the electricity side, you ask them what their plans were, because they killed the hydro. There was no plan to do the gas to energy project. They had nothing. They made no decision from 2016 to 2020. They brought illegally the plant, when they exited office, the Wärtsilä plant, that we still have a hard time now getting to operate at full capacity. What were their plans? Zero. I see them saying, oh, we fix a few transmission lines. Well, what about power generation? No plans there too. So for them to come and talk about electricity and water supply and how the PPP has no plans, it's a fact that today we have problems with the electricity sector. Last week I explained that the generation, the installed generation is less than the peak demand, and for a specific reason, because we're subsidizing electricity at this point in time. We had a massive shift from private generation over to the public sector. And so we've had to take some measures to address this, but this would be a short-term kind of arrangement because we're purchasing some additional short-term power, and that the definitive solution to this issue is the gas-to-energy project, which again I see some people criticizing. There's some, this Klang Sanzilo or whatever, saying that solar is better than the gas-to-energy project. And we explain a million times that solar cannot be base load. What are you going to do in the nights when the sun, or for a few days when the sun don't shine? Where are you going to order? It's cloudy. What are you going to do about that if that's your base load power plant? It's nonsense. Even Glenn Lal, probably by now in his weird way of thinking, would have accepted that, because he said on his program he could bring a contract for solar power at, I don't know, 3 cents per kilowatt hour. I'm still waiting. But there's still, in spite of all this resistance, we're forging ahead. We're forging ahead. You have a number of people trying to block this, from Patterson to some NGOs to APNU, because they know that this would not only solve the problem of electricity, the electricity woes we have, but also reduce the price. And they're worried about that. So before the end of the week, we should also go out back for the hydropower. I was asked about that, when we'll do that, and you would see a new request for proposal before the end of the week to return to that. We're planning not just the 33 megawatts of solar power now, the bid is out for that, but to supplement the grid in Berbice, Linden, and Region 2. But we're looking at another 25, potentially another 25 megawatts of solar power, which can be used in the day in the Demerara area, particularly along the Ogle 4-lane road that is being built, currently being built. So I just wanted to talk a bit about this, because this is what they're saying, putting on their flyers and sharing in the city. PPP doesn't have any plan. In fact, you name the sector and I will tell you what's the plan. Contrast that with anything APNU has published, or ask any minister in there from that era about their plans for the development of the sector, and you will find zero. On infrastructure itself, you would see an intricate web of roads and other economic type of infrastructure being built. But it's all with a master plan in mind. So it's not just the 4-lane up that we've just awarded to go from Georgetown to Mahaika on the East Coast on the railway embankment. But even now we're planning to extend the road from Arby Barker Road all the way to Enmore, another road. So coming out of the East Coast, we'd have 3 roads. The major road now, the railway embankment upgraded to a 4-lane road, and then another 2-lane coming at the back. So we can open up all those lands for commercial, industrial type activities as well as housing. And that's already part of the plan. The East Bank Road will connect with the highway and Silica City. And also, I see APNU even claiming credit for the highways too. They did absolutely nothing for these highways. The East Bank Road, that was not even part of the horizon. Now it's already a diamond, built out to diamond. It's already built out to diamond, 4-lane road here. The bridge across the river is not the ill-fated thing like Patterson had. You remember his unsolicited bid that he is in hot water for now. I think he's before the courts for that. But a properly conceptualized 4-lane bridge, high-rise bridge that will make all the difference in the world to the development of Region 3, as I explained before, because there'd be no weight restriction to move containers or anything of the sort, and it would not have to open. So I don't need to go back, but I need to. No, I just said I don't need to, but I need to. I need to remind people of this, because sometimes they get seduced by this nonsense that APNU talks about and to misrepresent. They're in a mode now where they're trying to rewrite their own history, a history of failure and no achievement. So every week they talk about, and it becomes so laughable. Some little thing they do, they fix a door and a coker in West Coast Berbice, and then they go and this is their big achievement for 5 years. And right now, you have 14 new pumps being installed, and that's the controversy. The 14 new pumps that are being installed, massive pumping stations that would ensure that we have greater capacity to tackle water, which is the bane of Guyana, from both sides, from the sea as well as from the highlands. And this is a problem. Managing water is a major problem. But 14 now new pumping stations, they don't see that. The controversy is about corruption that's contrived. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But 14 new pumping stations. We've just set aside $130 million from funds that we earn through the sale of forest carbon that we would have never earned on the APNU to build a series of hope-like canals that will alleviate the concerns of farmers and people who live in many regions, regions 3, 5, and 6 namely. They will do the same thing like the Hope Canal did for region 4, which was to bring some level, reduce the threat to the entire East Coast and Georgetown from the breakage in the Conservancy, and allow the farmers in Region 5 to not to have to worry that every time the water levels get high in the Conservancy, we'd flood them out by releasing the water into the Mica Creek. This is a plan for adaptation. So they're busy running around. Oh, Mahi Paul is concerned, writing a letter concerned about the delays in the pumping station now, some pumping station that is being built across the river. I'm so concerned about the delay. But he's not seeing the massive investment that they were not making. And they had resources to do this, but they chose to use it elsewhere. And that becomes the issue now. Oh, I'm writing the PPC, it's going too slow. Why is it going so slowly? Why is this person getting the contract, etc.? Now, people have a right to question issues surrounding transparency, and they have a system in Guyana. You can complain. Contractors, when we passed the new procurement law, updating all of the old rules, under APNU, there were no procurement law when PPP got into office. There were ST decisions and some old regulations from the colonial era that govern procurement. We passed a comprehensive law with the right of appeal. We had the constitutional changes that we led that put the PPC in place. And so we've strengthened the system. In the 5 years under APNU, look at the breaches. They bypassed the entire procurement system. So when you talk about contracts, somebody bid and get a contract and they question whether the person has the capacity, which they have a right to do. Under APNU, there were no bidding. Look at the Durban Park. We spent over $1 billion. Who bid for Durban Park? Where was that advertised? And the Auditor General said 600 million was missing. And that was under Patterson's ministry. They first said it wouldn't cost us a cent. They started collecting money from the private sector. We don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars were collected from the private sector, but ultimately the project ended up being funded from the Treasury. No bidding process, 600 million missing. That was what happened under APNU. Now they're complaining, that these people bid for the contract, but they don't have the capacity. At least people are bidding for contracts now. They have to go and fill up documents and come in, and not sit with a minister and negotiate like they did under APNU, the price for these contracts. So this is what has happened, and we're losing sight of all of these things. We're addressing the people's concerns. More farm-to-market roads are being built. Now, APNU cut the budget for farm-to-market roads, practically denuded it, because that was not important to them. Drainage and irrigation, they cut that budget too. They increased the taxes for the farmers, land rentals. They increased they put fat on machinery, fertilizer, pesticides. That was their help to agriculture. We've removed all of those. We're spending back on farm-to-market roads. We're spending back on D&I. We're spending back on research. We're bringing in a new tissue culture lab to do 4 million plants a year, so that people can have good quality planting material. Last year we did 4,600 breeding animals, pigs, and distributed those to the farmers. So I'm almost sounding like APNU with a coker. Now, if they fix a coker door, they mention that. But this is what's happening in that sector, in the agricultural sector. So a comprehensive plan for the development. When you look at what the support for the corn and the soya project and the support we give to our poultry producers now, it's a far cry from the days of APNU. The same thing in the mining sector. We don't have a plan. Their plan was to tax the sector. We lost 15,000 jobs in the sector. 3 new taxes. What were their plans for mining? We remove all those taxes. People were happy. The tributers tax now is down to 0. We took it down to 0. So in every one of these areas, you've seen major changes. The cabinet today met, and they awarded nearly 700 community roads. That is roads that people, when they come out their yard from, they will now have a new road before maybe mid-next year or the first quarter of next year, because these roads have about a 4 or 5 months duration to be built. They're not big roads, they're community roads. Nearly 700 of those. And this is only in two regions, regions 4 and 3, and 6 rather, because every other region has a separate allocation. I already told you that Linden roads were awarded over $2 billion of road, over 100 roads were awarded there, just in just one town. In New Amsterdam, we had already awarded about 30, and that's excluded from this set for Berbice even. nearly 700 roads coming out of the cabinet today. And that will probably, you may have close to 350 contractors getting those roads, small people. The sheer magnitude of what's happening now. Also, there may be corruption because with thousands of new contracts now, it's hard to police. Earlier this week, we had to deal with a case where an engineer was trying to shake down the contractor. Earlier this week, we have had reports on housing. You talk about housing. What were their plans for housing? Now we have, if you go to the back, you should just fly over and look at the new housing schemes that are being built, infrastructure everywhere going in. 30,000 housing lots already produced since we got in 3 years. Everyday contractors working there, putting in roads, electricity, water, getting more people land allocated, that they had never hoped to get a piece of land if you had waited on the APNU. Because in the first period, before the no confidence motion, there was no housing development. They talk about, in the same document, PPP enriching friends and families. The same document they're sharing in South Georgetown. But who are the ones who, on the housing? The minister, husband of housing was getting work in the ministry. When you look at the land allocated to people, I already mentioned Amanza Walton in Linden. When ordinary Lindeners couldn't get a plot of land, that we are now developing nearly 1,400 plots of land here, and 1,000 homes would be built by the government in Linden. Yes, so Amanza Walton got 3 plots, and her family got 3 plots. The Figueres got 2 plots. Lowenfield got a massive plot, 214 acres. We had to buy back land now to find so that we didn't encroach on Block 37, which is an area, a prime area, but has huge bauxite deposits there. We didn't want to encroach there, so we had to buy a piece of land privately off there to do the 1,000 homes now for people in Linden. This is the sort. Where was their housing program? Talking about enriching friends and family. You check the list of all of the people who got big plots of land. Several of them are working at the office of the president. And in the opposition, if you just go back to the period when we were in opposition, you will see what I mentioned their names. How many acres they got, thousands of acres. So this is what is, and then talking about living standards, raising living standards, that APNU will do that. This is, the worst thing could happen to people, a person who is working and doesn't have a job, especially parents when they can't feed their children. And I saw hundreds of them in the APNU period. People who are hardcore supporters of APNU found themselves in that situation. It's not just the sugar workers, because we already recognize that they did what they did to the sugar workers for political reason, and it's an act of racism too, and also that they just wanted to destroy the sugar industry. So leave sugar aside. But let's look at all of the other sectors where people lost jobs. Thousands of jobs in retail trade because money in circulation just shrunk radically. And why was this so? Because the government take in taxes skyrocketed. Just go through the numbers, take the estimates. And if you go to the estimates, you will see the growth in government revenue in that period. Massive growth in government revenue. So they were sucking out disposable income out of people's pockets. And when you do that, then they spend less in the economy. If they spend less, it's less business for people. Businesses started shutting down or laying off people. Thousands of people like that. Now, you have a minimum of 50,000 people, maybe just in this region now working, who are now working. In this region. In every community. We have some people who are scouring neighborhoods now to find workers, laborers, to work for them, and they can't find them. They go to the East Coast villages. They go in South Georgetown trying to find laborers, people who would work for $5,000, $6,000 per day. This is unskilled laborers. And they can't find them every single day. That was not the situation. People don't remember that period. We are just marking time. This country was just like a graveyard. A graveyard in those 5 years. That is how it was. And so that has changed. And so when they talk about, Norton said at the last press conference, people were better off in that period than now. Yes, they were better off. There were people who were better off. But not the masses. It's the politicians. They were better off. If you look at the politicians and they're signing bills and they travel and all of that, you'll get, and the per diem that they took when they were traveling into the interior, etc., you will understand why they're better off. Some ministers used to collect millions of dollars to fly into Region 9 on a trip where they were often going home and collect massive per diem for this. We could go back through that. It's just that we're too busy to do that. But we need, and I hope that people, particularly those who support the PPP and are looking at this program, that you go back and have these things resurface, because it seems as though all of that evaporated, that history, the recent history of them trying even to steal elections have evaporated. Now that brings me to stealing elections. So you know the last time I shared what was the collective sentiment of Guyana, that the so-called Washington Conference was a failure to achieve any of its objectives. They went up there with a racist agenda, hoping that the US government and congressmen would take their sides in pursuing the racist agenda. They did not succeed. They were told that there are two sides to the coin. Norton said that. And secondly, you show us the evidence. The people that they chose to show evidence of discrimination, we have demonstrated openly now that they are questionable characters, that they had nothing to do with discrimination. So they are unable to get any condemnation of the government of Guyana. That is what they were hoping for from the US policy makers. They failed miserably to achieve that objective. They one resolution that they passed unanimously was to ban Jagdeo from going to the US. That is the conference, their so-called conference. That is what, but they hate me, rather than anything to do with the so-called cause. So that is clear. It was a failure. Now, I also exposed, and I see Burke has been going crazy because he gets crazy when he's exposed. So he has been going crazy, and but that doesn't take away from his criminal record. He is a criminal and he's a conman, and that is a standard. You're smiling, Marcel. You agree with me? Okay. So he is a conman. So let's don't waste too much of my time with him. So after I spoke last week, I think went and misled the Congress people. So they were like, Jagdeo said, Jagdeo was saying this thing is a failure, nobody addressed it, so please issue a statement. And a statement was issued, but nothing along the lines of what they wanted. So let me tell you something about Ford. So Ford, Roysdale Ford, after being exposed by Sanasi, because he's vying for high office now in the PNC, so he's competing against Norton. Norton, I think, has been making the point that these guys were in government and that they enjoyed the suite, including Roysdale Ford, that there may have been some questionable dealings at the gaming commission. And I believe there were lots of questionable issues there. And I think at the right time, Roysdale Ford has to give answers to all that happened at the Gaming Commission. That, from what I'll come back to that at some point in time. I will not deal with it today. But he speaks, Roysdale Ford in the last week has issued about 6 press statements. He's into everything now, because the internal issue, the leadership fight is going. So he has to create a profile for himself. So he mentions 3 words. The government thinks it can do whatever it wants without consequences. Truth, transparency, and accountability. None of these 3 apply to Roysdale Ford. So he's been untruthful many times. His dealings were not transparent at the Gaming Commission, and recently from what we heard, and I don't think he's accountable. So how could you, a person, after I noticed Sanasi letter exposing a lot of the shenanigans that were taking place in this company that was importing fuel, in which Roysdale Ford had shareholding. So after that letter was issued, Roysdale Ford sought to blame the PPP for Sanasi's letter exposing him and Dorian Bess. In it, he said that Sanasi was basically, paraphrasing, a crook, utilized all sorts of money unaccountable, and he is a PPP man. But if so, why did Roysdale Ford? Why was he a partner of this company and he only exited in 2020? If you knew all of this about Sanasi throughout, that he was misusing the funds for the cricket board and everything else, and he's not a good character, and tried to overthrow their last government, the PNC government, etc. Why were you a part of the company in which he was part owner? And you used to sit together at business meetings and board meetings, etc. Is it untruthful now, since he's mentioning the word, he's being untruthful? Is it impaired judgment? Or is he just trying to cover up some real problems, some illegalities that were done? So someone needs to question this. Because if he claims now that this guy was totally a total scam, but he was part of the company too, all along, and benefiting from the suite in this company. Now he issued, like, as I said before, several statements, including he wants to see contracts for Gopnath and everything else, Bobby Gosai. But the last press conference, he said, if you lie about that, what else would you lie about? So they were saying that I claim that no Congress, this statement was made in the context of the claim that no congressman addressed the conference. And I said, if you lie about, and that Rick Fortbart had marketed this conference to be addressed by congressmen. If you go back to all of the numerous marketing tools that he was using, you will see he's always saying the conference will be addressed by congressmen, etc. So this is what I actually said. After the much vaunted Washington conference that I'm just going. Would be addressed by, because that's too long a quote. Let me give you a shorter one. Would be addressed by tons of congressmen, etc., that they told the public. I don't think a single congressperson addressed the conference. So, again, he lied to people. It was money making. And then I said, I don't know, I may be wrong, but I did not follow it, right? That's what I said. Now, it's clear. It's either congressmen addressed the conference or they did not address the conference. From up to now, I don't believe that any congressman addressed the conference. That is what I was talking about. They said that I said that the Congress people did not meet with them. I spoke about them posing on the corridor in Congress, etc. But I was speaking of the conference. And when the context in which I said, if you lie about that, what else would you lie about? This is what I said. Imagine APNU going to Washington to say the PPP tried to steal or stole the 2020 elections. How divorced are they from reality? How shameless could you be? And how could you do that with a clear conscience when everything points to the contrary, including the State Department that was part of the change? The United States State Department and the staff there, they don't change with administration, except for the political leadership. They have stability in government. They know of the attempts to steal the election because they helped to fight it off, the US government. Therefore, people have to think, if you lie about that, what else would you lie about? What else would you not lie about? That is what the context. They said that Roysdale Ford created a whole drama about this, that I lied. I made this statement saying that they never met the Congress people. That's okay. I don't really need it. So this was what the context was, because they went to Washington to lie about elections, and the people knew that they were so. But they have to make all sorts of excuses. And this is why I said that this Roysdale Ford is not a truthful person at all. He's not a truthful person. So he took a quote, and then they sent it up, I believe, to the congressmen to say, oh, Jagdeo said, look, you all didn't meet he said that we are lying about you meeting. And I think that's how they got the statement out of the Congress people. So this is something that is another point to prove how they can distort what you say. My comment about the lie had to do with the democracy issue. He distorted it. This guy is up to no good. He has less of a credibility even than Norton. He lies more than Norton. I thought Norton would take the prize for it. He would beat Norton any day in a sprint or a long distance race. For lying. And I see every day he issues some nonsense. Now whilst we're talking about this, we need to, there are a few things. The Vincent Adams, the darling of some of the newspapers. So suddenly from a man who Roysdale Ford wants the details from the ministry about how Bobby Gosai was appointed, whether there was a public process to appoint him as head of the petroleum unit. And the same Roysdale Ford not asking how they took an AFC guy. Bobby Gosai has never been a card-bearing member of our party. In fact, he was in partnership with Nigel Hughes when they had the Go-Go or something like that. They had an organization, not partnership, but was working, I think, with Nigel Hughes as the executive director or something of that organization that Nigel Hughes was heading. But they're not concerned about how Vincent Adams got the job. Vincent Adams doesn't have experience in EPA matters. He was a project manager somewhere in the US, and he is an AFC member. They took him and put him to head the EPA. Now, when he made a mess of some of the licenses there, and then he came out and suddenly, like Patterson, they're reborn. They're the smartest people in the world now. They have an opinion on everything. But I don't begrudge him. He could talk as much as he wants until he turns blue. I don't begrudge him as a Guyanese. He could do that. It's a free country. What I'm more concerned about, the duplicity in the media, as well about the duplicity in the media and in this so-called civil society. Now imagine anybody from the PPP saying this about the Chief Justice. I'm sure I speak for most in saying that I'm always very respectful of the judiciary and its decisions, but not to the extent when such consequential decisions as this one clearly defy science, logic, and common sense. So this is the ruling of the Chief Justice on the issue of flaring. So he is saying that the Chief Justice decision defies science, logic, and common sense. I can go on all day about the flaws in the Honorable Judge's decision, but limited by time to do so, so we'll address a few of the highly questionable bases of her decision. That's one. It's a long thing. I don't want to go on. Then I'm just taking little excerpts. How could someone bring in a case that women should cover their faces because the law allows it in a certain Middle East countries? Will she rule in their favor? So this is all the time a personal attack on the Chief Justice. Besides defying the judge unbelievably says that there is no evidence that the 20+ billion cubic feet of gas already flared would have an adverse additional impact, right? Besides defying the established science, One has to be hiding under a rock to say that. Now the Chief Justice must be hiding under a rock. Haven't the judge heard about climate change and energy policies developed globally to cut back on gas emissions that affect climate change? He's saying that the Chief Justice never heard about this. So that similarly, doesn't the Honorable Judge know that all of the major oil companies, including Exxon, have accepted that gas emissions are harmful to the environment and committed to cutting back on such emissions? The judge clearly shows our total lack of knowledge of what polluter pays principle means. If someone from the People's Progressive Party, the Attorney General, or any person had said this, the entire media will have been in uproar. Civil society would be calling for the person's head, etc., about the Chief Justice. They're being dragged before the court for contempt, everything. It's a detailed, vile attack on the Chief Justice, personal attack, and lack of knowledge, hiding under a rock, all sorts of things, defying common sense or judgment. And this is what, he gets a free pass on it, because he's the darling of the media. You let Jagdeo say something like this, just one comment, oh, the judiciary is taking too long to hear cases, like the case that Ramson filed against Gulsaran and the Starbuck News in 2017, a defamation case, has not been heard until now. We're in 2023. A defamation case against them. 2023, 2017 it was heard. If I come and complain that only cases that seem to involve PPP people speed through the system. My case, Annette Ferguson filed a case, it just goes with lightning speed. And this nonsense about Gulsaran, I see Starbuck News carrying it. All Starbuck News is falling prey to the same issue. This Ramjatan is a listless, hopeless character who looks for publicity. He is Gulsaran's lawyer. He's a vile person prone to lying. He told Nandalal this morning, he came to Freedom House and they tried to serve the thing somebody, and I sent down a message. I didn't even know the marshal was here. Lie, a bunch of lies, but that's Ramjatan. He lives in a different world. He shattered after his betrayal of all that he stood for. This is the man who defended stealing elections. I think he shattered intellectually and mentally. So he's just looking for something now to get in the public domain. Now, all Starbuck News could have done is to call me and say, are you hiding from the service? I said in a letter before this, and you saw the letter, that Satram said, he asked for an apology, and I said, no, I will defend the statement that Gulsaran has no integrity. I will defend that statement, and I said, you sue me. Why would I be hiding from that? And if now at this press conference, all they could do if they can't serve me, drop it off by the AG department and I'd consider it as being served. Just give it to him and we will respond to it, because I will defend it. And I made the point about this guy has been in the public domain for 15 years, criticizing the government, vile things against Ashley Singh, everybody. But one time I said he has no integrity and he wants to sue. Well, I can substantiate that. In my view, he has absolutely no integrity, and I explain why. He was Deputy Auditor General hired under APNU in 1980s. We checked the terms of reference. We got his terms of reference as Deputy Auditor General for the job. One of his responsibilities was to help draft the audit report for that period. There was no audit report. So what it meant is that the sole purpose of the Auditor General at that time was to audit central government accounts. We had, when the PPP got into office, we expanded that by changing the law to allow them to audit public corporations. But at that time, it was only central government accounts, public accounts. So their sole purpose for existing, the Auditor General and the Deputy Auditor General, was to submit audited statements to the Parliament. Now, they claimed that they were not getting the statements. So that meant that they collected money and did nothing, wages and salaries, Gulsaran, for all those years, because your primary output has to be audited public accounts. You collected money from the taxpayers' treasury for all those years. If you couldn't perform your tasks and you had integrity, you would say, listen, this is an unaccountable system. I can't perform my job, I'll resign. He did not resign. In fact, they hired him as Auditor General. He moved from deputy to the Auditor General in 1990. And then he became Auditor General, and still he didn't submit any reports. The first report came in 1992, and guess what? He takes credit for that. He says he returned Guyana to accountability. What happened in 1992? Something major happened. The government changed. The PPP returned Guyana to accountability. So he had no integrity in that period. That is one. Two, and there are lots of things. I remember when he was seconded, he is coming to me. There are lots of things that will be in the affidavit because I was president. Came to me for wages increases numerous times. I said to him, I can't. It will trigger a generalized increase. He said, you can give me a loan. Or willing to throw his staff under the bus. I did not agree to that. Many times he wanted to keep the job, work abroad in the UN, and keep holding on to the post of Auditor General here. We had a big fight over that, Roger and myself. And that was one of the reasons I think he soured on us. And then his son, I think, became a member of the AFC and was on their list in 2006. So he was there. That's why I can speak about my personal experience with him. He lacks integrity. Now, professionally, he did an estimate, a so-called estimate of money that was under the PPP, corruption through procurement fraud. This was repeated. This is the APNU manifesto document in 2015. Reducing procurement fraud estimated by Mr. Anand Gulsaran, the former Auditor General. So his name is mentioned in the APNU document to be about 28 to 35% of a total procurement spending of $140 billion. So we're talking about nearly $50 billion of fraud on the upper end. $50 billion of $140 billion was going to procurement fraud. Now, we invited him several times to tell us which projects. Only for $1 billion. Just account for $1 billion of procurement fraud, not 50. Until now, he has not done that. And the media should ask him, how come you estimated this? Is this not professional? I think malfeasance to some extent, maybe, but definitely no professional integrity. If you can't substantiate what you write, and I think it was written for the political opposition at that time to put in their manifesto because they quoted him. So up to now, he would have to stay in court because this would be one of my key things to point out, that this is not a professional work. It lacks integrity, this work that he did for APNU, or he did for himself, but he's unwilling to give an explanation. Because you were criticizing the PPP government, under PPP, I'm General Secretary of the party. You make all these outlandish claims, and we must not say, we don't believe, he refuses to substantiate these claims. Therefore, he has no integrity whatsoever. And I will defend this because there are numerous cases. So he will have to go and show how he substantiated this, because he never made it public, the details. And it would be helpful if you in the media ask him about this. Where was the $50 billion in 2014 lost through procurement fraud? $50 billion per annum, over $140 billion. So these people, they get a free pass. I've seen again this thing about the oil and gas, the damning international report. I mentioned this before. Unbelievable. I don't know why. Does it make any sense to say anything to Kaitor News, the damning international report? How many times that you find solar cheaper alternative? I dealt with that earlier. I'm not going to deal with it. It's pure nonsense. Utter nonsense. You cannot have solar as a base load. I don't know with this. And then Guyana debt will climb after the gas to energy project. We have made it clear that that this is how business operates. This is how a country operates. You have a project. You borrow to do the project. How do you pay back for this project? It could come from revenue, or it can come, is the project on its own a feasible project? I've demonstrated that if you sell power from this project at 11 cents per kilowatt hour, we can cover, at 4 cents per kilowatt hour, we'll cover the repayment for all of the infrastructure and also the running costs for both the NGL facility and the power plant at 4 cents per kilowatt per hour, including the repayment on the pipeline. Not both, all three. At 4 cents per kilowatt hour. That would be the final cost to the government when we repay all of those and to run the plant. We can sell it at 11 cents. Now it's 22 cents we're selling at. We sell at 11, you have some transmission losses and you have some commercial losses, theft. So that is why you can't sell it maybe at 6 cents or 8 cents. You have to take account of that. And therefore, a project is a feasible one, it pays back for itself. But that excludes all of the liquids now that we're getting, the cooking gas and everything, that we can sell separately and earn maybe over $100 million a year too, from separately. So not only would the project pay back for itself and be very profitable and cause a reduction in power, but we can earn $100 million on it. Now, if the prices are kept at that way for the gas and the cooking gas and stuff, based on current prices, in 20 years, the life of the project, if you earn $100 million a year, you earn $2 billion. It's $2 billion in 20 years, $100 million a year. $2 billion. I almost thought I'm like Amanza. Oh yeah, remember she couldn't do the conversion. So you can earn $2 billion from it maybe, leaving out that it's paying back for itself. That's more than the total cost of the project. But that's different ways of looking at it. And some guy abroad deals with Anyhow, I see Patterson now talking about the success of oil block auctions. I'm not dealing with that. I think I may end here because I'm sure you have a lot of questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Davina Bagat with Kaichur News. Sir, the opposition has called for a legal timeline to be set in which oil audits can be completed. They say that any delays to the period should be properly communicated to the public, and the report upon completion should be made public. How do you respond to those calls?
I think they're justified in saying that there should be, these matters should be dealt with faster than the way the first audit was dealt with. And again, we will maintain that timelines and the final decisions on audits will be in the only, would be determined only by the technical people or advisors. We don't, when this issue came up first, Marcel raised it, it was about timeline first. It was taking too long. And I explained at that time that we don't want to say, speed this up to the detriment of an examination, a careful examination of the content, the audit reports, etc. But of course, it should be time-bound, and a reasonable time-bound should be given to the technical people. So I agree with that.
Thank you. Sir, Exxon's consultant has said that they have never conducted an economic study to determine the likely devastation from an oil spill in the Stabroek block. Is this something that government will be pursuing soon to properly be prepared for such an event?
I answered that question three press conferences ago. Look at my response when I was speaking about the EIA, the public hearing at the EIA that took place, and that question was posed to the consultant then, and I explained that. Go back and look at my explanations.
Okay. How does government view other countries using Guyana already as a negative example in the oil and gas industry and using our experience to improve their sector?
I saw we have had approaches from a number of places, Namibia. A lot of people are interested in, first of all, the pace at which things are developing here. And we have been sharing with them our experience so that we don't become a humbug, that the government doesn't become a humbug to the pace of development. But at the same time, ensuring that all the regulatory issues are dealt with to international standards. And regulatory meaning permitting and everything else. So they are very much concerned about the fact that if they don't start early, that they may miss the bus. And I saw an article about Suriname ring fencing, but if they don't, they're gonna come in with a first FPSO years from now. Years from now. If you don't get in very early, you may miss the bus. And Suriname is on the verge of missing the bus, given what is happening. So we're happy that Suriname is moving forward. We believe that if there is an oil industry in Suriname and it has extra gas, there are possibilities of working together maybe some common infrastructure, but we're still there, still a long way off from actually producing oil, a long way off from that. And a significant timeline into the future. So the experience that is why people are, I think they're interested in Guyana, because they've seen our experience at putting in place a proper regulatory framework. And I've explained before how we have amended the licenses, and they're all in the public domain. So if you compare the earlier licenses to the ones now, you will see a qualitative difference. The environmental permits have evolved qualitatively. The Natural Resources Fund, they're interested in many provisions of the Natural Resources Fund. Our local content, although we took a lot from Ghana, some countries are now coming to ask us how, because we took a staged approach to this, to get it early. They're asking us a lot about our experience, the petroleum activities bill. So I think they're very interested. By the way, we also have received the draft gas utilization strategy, and hopefully by next week it will be out in the public domain for consultation. This is something I promised. I said once we get through the first wave of reforms, we'll go in the gas utilization strategy and then on enhanced monitoring. And I already told you that we have terms of reference already done for an audit of the processes consistent with the PSA, how we are managing that contract from the ministry's perspective, whether there are gaps in data that they have to submit to us and how we process that data. And then once I have that kind of audit, it's not an audit, but an assessment, we will then build in the structures to ensure greater compliance on monitoring. That is timeliness of data, timeliness of our publication of data, actual physical monitoring of the production. All of those things are coming. So I think they're interested in how we are moving forward, because wherever you go, if you talk to people, and we have daily contacts from various countries, they want to learn, particularly those countries that are newly entering the industry.
Is government considering another boot arrangement for the Amila Falls project?
Yes, it will be. We made that clear from the beginning. That's why we terminated the engagement with the Chinese, because they wanted on a boot arrangement, and then they wanted to transfer it to EPC. And we said, no, we don't want to own the plant. We will buy the power. And that is why the position that Kaichor News had when they helped APNU kill that project, that we were going to acquire $2 billion of debt. It's not factual because it's a boot arrangement. There's not a cent of debt for the government. It's develop and then you buy power from the company.
Just to follow up on that, please, you said there's no debt for the country, but if halfway through there's an issue, will we not be responsible for paying back?
No, because we are buying power supplied. So they would have a power purchase agreement. So if they can't supply the power, they don't get paid. They get paid on power delivered to Georgetown, and now not necessarily Georgetown now. It will be the Eccles control center that we advertise for, a major control center. I didn't even mention that when I was talking about planning, but a major control center that will see every area in the country. We don't have to wait on reports where there is a blackout. You will see it in the control center immediately from the time a grid or something comes off. And we are working on that now. So Kaichur and the others, and APNU, that was one of the reasons, and it was a total lie. First, they said, oh, the place wouldn't have enough water. Well, that's what you create a reservoir for. A river you can't just build it on the river. You have low drought season and you have rainy season. We showed that in the period with drought, you would have about 750, I think, gigawatt hours, and then if it goes rainy season, 1,300 gigawatt hours. It was a big range. So that was a lie. Secondly, the second lie was that it was to be a big debt because it was a boot. It was not going to be a burden. If we had that at this time, because at that time it was 10 cents per kilowatt hour. We were looking at 10 cents per kilowatt hour. Now I think it will come down even further. If we had that from 2017, we would have had 165 megawatts of clean power in the system. They killed it. And so, again, it's the same basis on which we attended at that time.
Thank you, sir. Finally, from me, what are your thoughts on former President Ramatar's statement regarding renegotiation of the Stabroek block?
I think the president has addressed this adequately. I don't have anything to add. I don't have anything to add.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jagdeo. Over in Trinidad and Tobago, their electricity commission is set to address the country on increasing their electricity rates. And in addition to rates increasing, this would also logically result in a wider increase in the cost of living. Has the government been paying attention to these difficulties happening there, and what lessons there are for Guyana to learn, given that we're now going to look at slashing our own electricity rates?
So this was an age-old problem that Trinidad was subsidizing electricity, and it's below their cost, current cost. So if you recall, when I was president, Owen Arthur and we had a major public spat with Trinidad and Tobago at that time, Mr. Manning. Because we're talking about opening up Trinidad's market to goods from our countries in the context of the single market and economy. And we had some resistance to that. And then we said, if we are going to have the goods flowing freely from every country, then if a single country were to subsidize its electricity, then its manufacturers would have an advantage over the producers in another countries based on subsidized power. And therefore, there should be some countervailing taxes to offset that. So, but it never really went anywhere. But since then, there was this issue of cheap electricity to the manufacturers there. Suriname had the same thing. Suriname increased their power, the cost to the consumers significantly. I did not know about Trinidad, so now that you mention it, that they're contemplating increasing. They increased it once before, but if they do this too, I think they're going to take it up to a level, or they're probably making a loss now from the supply of power. In our case, At the 11 cents per kilowatt hour, I just explained to you that we will be covering all of our costs, and we'd still have a profit margin, we believe, in there. So it's not below cost. And it is subsidy in a sense because we're getting the gas for free now, but it's not below our cost. And therefore, at 11 cents per kilowatt hour, it will be half of what people pay now. So we are very mindful about building systems that can be sustained in the long run. And sometimes when governments do this, they create a syndrome that is very hard to address. Now, since Starbuck News has been running this cost of living thing, every week somebody's saying, we pointed this out, that people look at if you look at the cost of living increases across the world, in 2022, our rates were lower than many developed countries in the world and close to CARICOM rates, the inflation rate. The CPI moved by about 7%. But many of those countries didn't do what we are doing. We kept electricity prices constant, kept water prices constant. We removed the taxes on data, a whole range of commodities to cushion the impact. So we took steps to address some of the concerns of people. Unlike those countries where the people have had to actually face a major increase in food prices because of COVID, but also electricity, water increases, a whole range of other issues. So that's why we were urging Starbuck News and the others to look at the measures we took by reducing the rate at which we calculate the ad valorem tax. The freight. We did not, when the freight moved to 20,000 per container, we kept it at 3.5 to calculate taxes because it's cost, insurance, and freight, CIF. So that's how we managed to go through this crisis, and it had less of an impact on us here in Guyana, how we manage through it.
Could you say whether the most substantially responsive bidders have been identified for the bid round so far?
So the consultants now have submitted back to the permanent secretary of the ministry an early assessment of the bids, looking at all the technical issues now. We anticipate that the evaluation team will complete their work sometime next week. So they will look at the consultant's report too. So we've had the bids, the consultant report, etc. Now, on that matter, I saw the kite show carried a story again about them not being compliant in terms of gazetting. And I said to the ministry, get all of your lawyers. It's either we're compliant or not. And so get everyone together and issue a release, which they did, and they clarified it. So, and they said they're compliant with the law because the lawyers had to examine this. So please, if there is anything else, because it doesn't seem as though it's factual, that story is not factual. That's why I got the ministry to issue a separate release earlier in this week, because Kaicho keeps carrying this on all the time. Yes, go on.
Okay, two more things. You mentioned just now that just last week, the government had to deal with a case of corruption in which an engineer was trying to shake down a contractor. Could you say how that was treated with? And what do you say to engineers and contractors who, with respect to their various responsibilities, are trying to rob the government?
So let me give you, let me say something here. That people, either who are working for government contractors, any attempt any attempt to ask you for money, because there are thousands of contracts. I just explained to you 700. We have people, there would be a clerk of work almost on every site who will look out for the government interests. They have to examine how many loads of sand come in, whether the people are building the sand today, putting in the sand today, the required level, whether there is a BRC fabric like we found out in Madhya. Somebody got the work in Georgetown, they subcontracted to another guy. Guy was putting in concrete road without the BRC fabric. If the people were not vigilant there, it would have happened. We wouldn't have known. So there are lots of these. You imagine 700 only in 2 regions, regions 4 and 6. And there are other contracts there, leaving out the whole country. And this excludes all housing contracts. So you're talking about maybe 7,000 contracts on the implementation now. We can't know if a clerk of work on a project in Blackbush Polder or somewhere else is asking the contractor for money. But the contractors have to understand that if they comply with this, they're not only breaching the system, they're doing something illegal. They should contact us, like some are doing this. Please contact the President's office or my office. It will be treated as high priority. Or Public Works, the minister. Please contact us, any person trying to shake you down. That is my message to people out there. Similarly, if people say to you they can get a house lot for you and somebody in housing, don't give them your money. Every week, people coming to cry by us, some lady run away with their money. People walk into the ministry, go and talk to the guard, they collect money from them. This is a major issue. If you do it, you're not going to, and we find out, you may not even get a house lot that you're eligible for if you apply for it. Please don't go to middlemen. Don't go, and there's no middleman here. Anybody who says that to you, you just bring it to the president's attention or the minister or my attention or the tender board. Get it out in the public domain. Go public. Go public with it. That's what we need. Go public with it. I don't see it as criticizing the government if somebody freaks out about corruption, somebody trying to shake you down, and you put it out in the public domain. Then we need to examine, we will examine it. We'll examine it. And so this is something where we are having more difficulties is when there is collusion. So the clerk of work now, the contractor has to put 5 loads of sand or 10 load. He puts 5 and they calculate the value of the 5, not that they didn't put down, and share the proceeds. So that is something that we are faced with. But because there is this overwhelming number, you can't say, all right, slow down, we'd only do 5 roads because we can monitor 5 roads. Everyone wants their road done now. Everyone wants the health facility done now. Everyone wants a house lot now. Now they want it. They don't want to wait next year. They want it now. They come to you now. So people need to seek if they're in shaking down. Don't come and tell us afterwards. Come when this, so we can set up a sting. So we can set up a sting and find people. And then you put it before the police.
Okay. Finally, has the government received the field development plan for the Whiptail project yet?
Yeah, I don't know. No, the end of October. They said they will submit it at the end of October. The license, this is my thing. MGL has indicated their intention to submit the production license application and FDP by the end of October this year. So it will be end of October. This is based on our report from the ministry. I have to be careful that these are based on reports from the ministry.
Yes.
Couldn't Starbuck News call me on that? You call me all the time on the Gulfs Run thing?
I'm asking you now.
Okay, all right.
No, we're dealing with Gulfs Run.
8 times he tried.
8 times. Is that true?
Knowing Ramjatan, he is a liar.
And said 8 times.
Well, I don't know.
He said he went to your home. The guard said you were asleep.
No,
they went back.
I wouldn't know because I didn't know. I read it in the Starbuck News that it's 8 times that he's saying. Nobody told me that he didn't. The first week, I'm in the public domain. I'm here. I linger everywhere. People know my schedule is in the public. I was in Linden. They could have come and see me in the public. I'm in the public. Or drop it off by the AG. I urged them, or my lawyer urged them to file this. But it's publicity. This guy loves publicity and wants to be the victim. Oh, somehow Jagdeo avoiding service. I am trying to do that. You collect it and bring it to me, and I will accept it as served. Yes.
Is your agent? No.
Right.
I tell them to bring it back here.
Yes. No, just drop it off at the AG chamber. He will, Anil Nandalal will accept it. I will consider it as being served. That's all they have to do. Drop it off there or with my lawyer.
Okay, that's on that. I'm also following up on the same audit issue with regards to the disciplinary action against Mr. Gosai. We haven't heard back anything on that. In what form? Well, it just said disciplinary action. We wanted to know in what form was that going to take? Is Mr. Gosai in the country currently? And we've been trying to reach the PS of the Ministry of Natural Resources, and
I think they need to speak more on this matter, and I will urge them. I'll urge them to do so. I think Mr. Gosai is in the country. Because at the meeting of the cabinet, the president met with Exxon. Exxon said they never told Patterson that there was an agreement. So Patterson reported that Exxon told them there was an agreement on the 214. They said they never said that to Patterson. They said they submitted documents to support the reduction. 2, he spoke with Mr. Gosai and Stacia together. Gosai said he sent documents to Stacia supporting the letter that the minister wrote in 2022 about that Exxon had submitted, and the minister Gosai took that to him. He wrote Stacia. Stacia asked for the supporting documentation. Gosai said he sent it to the GRA. The commissioner said he never received those. Well, because in the letter also in July I think it was, he kept asking for the supporting documents. Never received those, the GRA. So all of the parties were there, so he is in the country.
Culture News. Allegations have surfaced of gold sifting at the Guyana Manganese Inc. Will you call for the agency relevant authorities?
I saw GGMC dealt with that. You have the detail, you reported on it, so you must have some sources. If the media has sources of people who committed illegality, you should take it to GGMC. Give us the info. That's what they call publicly for. You have the info, give it to them, they'll investigate it. All right?
Yeah, my second question, when the PPP took office in 2020, did it ever attempt or try to bargain or negotiate with Exxon to fix any of the terms of the contract, or did they just choose to adhere to contract sanctity and move on?
We outline our position pre-election and in the post-election period. The first engagement we had was with the gas to energy project about that, and that the power will have, their gas will have to be free, contrary to what is believed. Exxon was not favorably disposed to it at the beginning, and that had to be a negotiated position. So we mentioned, that was one of the things that we mentioned, and we mentioned also the issue of the local content. Those were two things that we dealt with immediately, the first meeting. Right? Yes.
Thirdly, the government is taking a case to CCJ involving the BK over the waterfront property fiasco. Would it take similar steps, or why is it not taking similar steps against the coalition government for signing such a bad deal?
Well, it's Jordan. Jordan who did it. So that's the case we're taking, right?
The oil contract, what signing?
Okay. But so in this case, this is no sanctity of contract in this. We believe that it was a corrupt act in this. In this case. Trotman is saying, your new star now, Trotman was saying, it's just bad negotiation. There was no corruption in this. But in this case, our argument is that a wharf that is valued at over 30 million US dollars, conservatively put now, was sold for $100,000. $100,000. 30 million US dollars. And that is it. And we could have, there are lots of other cases, I hope that by now that they're filed against Jordan, because you recall he passed title to a number of people and they didn't even pay a cent. So when you pass title to someone, then that means that they have met all their financial obligations. Only then you get the title. He issued the title in the period, and I think it was in the post-election period, and we didn't receive a cent. That's all the lands at Ogle, a lot of the lands at Ogle that we ended up having to take back. And again, I hope that you will have a more nuanced approach, not Glenn Lally, you'd never have that, but the reporters, about all the explanations we gave, as though I saw Vincent Henry now talking about net zero and all. Vincent Adams, so I get all these, lots of Vincent, and they all have one thing in common, like Vincent Alexander. I don't want to say that. We have lots of voters who are Vincent, who are PPP people too. Let me don't say anything bad about that. So yeah, that it's more nuanced. It's as though net zero don't exist, as though there's the paucity of funds. They're talking about climate change and everything. Exxon is just, you saw what Exxon is doing now. Exxon is trying to acquire this massive producer, shale and all of that in the US. It's not a straightforward, a linear thing. And that's the unfortunate thing, is that Glenn Lal thinks in a linear way. Thinking in policy making is much more complex. It's never a linear way. Oh, ring fencing could save all the money in the world. Ring fencing could lead now to us having nothing to in the future. When we admitted that we are foregoing revenue now in exchange for massive future income. Massive future income, because it's going into the projects that will increase production. And so even with the same share of the 50-50 plus the 2% royalty, that the future income, because of the bigger scale, would be massive in Guyana's case. And we are deliberately foregoing that in this period for that purpose. And then trying to grab this bone now could cause you to lose all the bones, the bigger bone too, in the future. That is what's happening now, you know, along with the proverbial dog with a bone. And he literally has a bone to right to pick, yes, without sunk his teeth into it. Anyway, it's very funny sometimes when I watch what he says. But yeah, okay, let me don't go on anymore. Thanks. Yes, Dennis.
Mr. Jagdeo, based on what you said just now about the exchange with Mr. Gusai and the President, to what extent is disciplinary action now off the cards?
No. This is a pre-ministerial statement.
So
this was pre the ministerial statement. After the minister reported to the cabinet, the president met with all the parties to find out. And then that was pre the statement.
Okay, so
so that doesn't change.
At what point will we know whether, in fact, he will be disciplined and what form that will take?
Yes, so that is why Marcel said, let the minister and the PS deal with that.
Okay.
So
and can you say, sir, in relation to the involvement of Mr. Gusai, why at no stage wasn't the minister or cabinet involved? Because this is certainly a huge sum of money here. And has government decided that yes, GRA will go ahead with the 214?
It's 214. We said that from the beginning. So the moment the August 8th letter was written, I didn't see it was written to the minister, August 8th, that we are closing. GRA says we're closing at 214 because they had not seen the additional documentation that the minister wrote since 2022 on. You saw the statement from the minister. I kept asking, and the GRA was saying they never received it. Gopnath said he sent it. So they said, listen, we have not received anything additional. We're closing at 214. That was the position, which we were saying all along as our advisors. Their GRA's final position as our advisor will be the government's position. So that is clear as daylight at this point in time. It's 214.
In the engagement, why wasn't no minister or cabinet involved in the initial stages when these two figures were being...
Because as I said before, audits are purely technical issues. Policy issues ministers get involved in, but not routine thing. An audit is done. There are conventions to follow. There are bills to verify, etc. The minister can't sit and say, oh, I accept this or I don't accept. They don't have the training, and it's not their place to do that. No minister should be doing that in an audit, which is a technical matter. That's what we said from the beginning. Technical issue. That's why we're reluctant to even push them to say, do it today before they say, oh, Jagdeo or the minister pushed us to close the audit before we have had enough time to assess it properly. So it's purely technical. Anybody who wants a minister to be involved in these audits, then that's not going to happen under us. Yeah. Give back Marcel, yeah.
Is the discussion with the president and Exxon, this is pre-statement too, yes?
Yes, he called the same day after trying to verify from all the parties. So Patterson had said Exxon told them the government agreed to this sum. So President called to find out whether that was accurate. It was not.
And it was
Exxon
not.
said that to him. It's not accurate.
But the president is holding to what GRA says, still,
Yes,
that
yes.
it's 214.
It's 214. Everybody, yes, it's 240.
14 too.
Yes, GRA, yes. Everyone knows it's 240.
Final follow-up. In terms, you mentioned that the government had approached Exxon in the gas to energy and local content. With more projects coming on board, will we see any future negotiations to claw back value for anything else?
Well, a lot in the licenses, you see in the licenses more and more. So we got, there are smaller sums, but to pay more for regulatory stuff, inspections. If you look at the licenses and the fees under the licenses, you will see a bit more in that regard. So yes, there are other areas too. And just examine the licenses and trace the evolution of the fee structure. Okay, thank you.